He'll either become a universal monarch or he'll become a renunciant who will gain enlightenment. His father, of course, wants him to become a king. He wants him to follow in his footsteps.
As Siddhartha grew up, his father did all he could to tempt him to stay inside the palace. He tried to create a perfect and seductive world for him to live in. As was customary for a prince, Siddhartha was offered beautiful maidens to entertain him with music and to pleasure him with their physical beauty. When Siddhartha reached the age of 16, the king even found him a beautiful bride, Princess Yasodhara. Siddhartha had to compete for her hand, and the king was delighted how skillfully his son fought off the competition. The king began to convince himself that palace life was beginning to suit his son at last. But this was wishful thinking, and Siddhartha pestered his father to allow him out of the palace. Unable to refuse his son's wishes any longer, the king desperately set about clearing every eyesore from the surrounds of the palace. Like a Hollywood film set, the sick, the poor, and the old were all deleted from the fantasy presented to the young prince. Despite his father's efforts, Siddhartha's first taste of the outside world would reveal stark realities. With the naivety of a child, he set out with Channa, his charioteer, as his guide. The prince would make 4 journeys and see 4 signs, as predicted by the palace fortune teller. Early Buddhist texts place great importance on this point in the story, as each journey would reveal to Siddhartha an aspect of life which had been deliberately hidden from him. On his first trip, Siddhartha went out into the country, away from his father's influence. He noticed an old man painfully making his way through a village. He asked Channa what was wrong with the man, and Channa explained the process of aging to him. Siddhartha was alarmed when he learned that aging is inescapable and happens to us all. For Siddhartha, reality was beginning to unveil a cruel picture of the world, where misfortune and suffering appeared to dominate every aspect of life. The second sign was soon to follow, when Siddhartha noticed a sick man, his features twisted with disease. He asked Channa if anyone could become sick, and again he was shocked when he learned the brutal truth that we all can. The protective wall of fantasy around him was beginning to crumble, and the further the young prince ventured, the more of life's horrors confronted him. Now he saw a corpse bound in linen being carried to the funeral pyre, and the story records that Siddhartha is appalled to discover not only that all men are mortal, but also that it was a Brahmin belief that after death we are all reborn, to suffer and die, time and time again. There seemed no end and no solution to life's miserable and inevitable cycle.
The Buddha's life is an allegory because the most important point in it is that here is a young man who's brought up in every luxury, and he realizes that isn't enough because he has a shock. He has a shock because for the first time he encounters old age, disease, and death. It's not plausible to think that growing up as an intelligent youth, he wouldn't have known anything about it. The point is rather to convey the tremendous impact that coming face to face with these fundamental facts of human existence has and must have upon us, and that it's urgent that we do something about it.
But it was the fourth sign that would definitively point to Siddhartha's future. A man wearing a simple robe with a begging bowl before him. Why should anyone want to give up the pleasures of the world to wander the countryside begging? Asked the prince. Chani explained that the man had renounced such pleasures in order to confront reality and seek answers to this painful existence.
The account of the four signs I see as quite an effective story way of putting certain existential realizations. We all know we're going to get old, we all know we're going to get sick, we all know we're going to die in our heads. But it's very different to sit down one day and realize here, no, it's not just other people that get old, sick and die. It's I'm going to get old, I'm going to get sick, and I'm going to die. And I think the story accounts are trying to portray that moment of existential realization where you see it for the first time. You're going to die, and you know it, you taste it.
When Siddhartha returned to the palace after this fourth journey, his mind was reeling with his new understanding of the world.